Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about, things that people need to just understand that should be common sense. And this really is what the available scientific literature around the world has to say about nutrition and health. Okay, and we have to be clear on this. People say silly things like, well, there's always massive changes in debates in the science. Well, of course there is. But it doesn't mean that the trends do not hold constant. And again, we need to be clear on this. We need to be very, very clear on this. These trends do hold constant, irrespective of a few individual variables and studies. And when you start looking at meta-analysis, there are absolutely trends that hold true very, very well. And when we say trends, it doesn't mean absolutes, okay? Because we're talking about a massive, diverse population across the earth. Okay, there are different genetics, there are different predispositions among people for certain things, but there are things that we know because, again, you see them. All right, number one, what sort of foods tend to be most heavily correlated with poor health outcomes? Okay, and this is, again, even when multivariate analysis is done. All right, as a general rule, and again, please note, general rule. So it doesn't matter that there's some 92-year-old somewhere who's an exception to this. But by and large, people who consume less animal fat, consume less refined sugar and less alcohol, tends to be healthier. Okay? People who consume more of these things tend to be less healthy. They tend to have more diseases, right? What diseases are we talking about? Metabolic related and cardiovascular diseases. All right, that means heart attacks, strokes, cancer, diabetes. Okay, we need to be extremely clear. These are the number one killers of the human race, even in the context of aging. Because people say, well, yeah, obviously eventually things will quit as we get really old. Of course they do. But for a lot of people, they get over 100 before they die. But these are the things that tend to knock you out sooner. Are there obvious exceptions? Accidents, homicide, suicide, things like that. Sure, all those things. Medical malpractice, other diseases, absolutely. But none of those add up to the same amount. Every single one of the things that I listed, let's go back over them. These top three things, any one of them by themselves, when you look at the other 100 causes of death, exceed all the others added up. Okay? In other words, accidents, homicides, all of that, doesn't all added together, does not compete with diabetes for the death rate. It just doesn't. Not even close. Okay, these are the people that suffer from these things the most. Conversely, people who consume the most fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, beans, tend to have less diseases, less obesity, and less health problems. They have lower rates as a general rule of all of these things than people who eat less of them. Okay, and notice we said trends. At no point anywhere in here did I say any specific food is bad. I mean, we can say alcohol is always bad. There are no health benefits to alcohol. This is a point of major contention. That people point out, well, there seems to be this minor benefit from this type of alcohol. It's like, yeah, but you could eat some fruit or grapes and get all of that without the actual poison in it. Because alcohol is literally a poison. Literally. It's as a figure of speech. No, it biologically is a poison. So that's why you get drunk from it. That's why it damages your liver. But all of that aside, outside of that one, I'm not saying foods are automatically bad or you could never have certain foods. Okay, what I'm saying is that this is the evidence for all of this is overwhelming. And any counter arguments that people have are very minor, meaning you can make individual arguments. Well, because this food is less processed, I think it's perfectly fine for me to eat tons of it. Okay, but that's just not supported in the data. Or, well, no, because there's oxalates or an anti-nutrient or whatever, some of those things. Okay, but that's not supported by the data. Okay, you have a hypothesis, and by and large, when you look at definitely population levels, all these things can be correlated, meaning people who eat more of certain things tend to have better health in all these areas than people who eat less of them by a pretty large margin. On the other end, we come over and people who consume more of those other things I listed, again, animal fats, refined sugar, alcohol, as a general rule, tend to be more unhealthy than people who consume less of them. Again, the data on all this is very, very, very definitive. And individual studies discussing, well, it's been found that in some contexts, saturated fat isn't always linked with, but by and large it is. Right? And there's been a lot of discussion with that when you get into comparative data. Compared to what? And that's the problem. What is your comparison? And then we get into individual metabolic ward studies, and we can actually look at what happens with these individual foods and ingredients and what responses they cause in the body in terms of insulin responses, all these other things, and how they affect inflammatory markers. And plus we can get into very individual stuff going on, meaning not all omega-6s are the same, not all polyunsaturated fats are the same. The sources of them impact literally which fatty acid they are, and so on and so forth. We can look at all this in the context of overall diet. So again, this is why we're saying, look, we're looking at overall trends. And the trends are prevalent. So a lot of times the individual nuance isn't always as important. Again, if this certain food, if, for example, the oxalates in broccoli were a major health risk, you wouldn't see this trend. You would see trends in the other direction, right? And you don't. So this is what we mean when we discuss these things. And this is not that debated in science. This is pretty well universally identifiable, trackable, well understood. But again, because it's trends, it doesn't mean there are not exceptions. There are some people who are just genetically resilient to some things. There are some people who are so sensitive to certain things that they're going to have problems no matter what. There are certain cancers that 30% of people who are genetically prone to it are going to get no matter how healthy they try to live. That's it. It's just that simple. The healthy lifestyle, though, may impact their ability to fight it and survive it. But it may not prevent them from getting it. And that is reality. Because we are dealing with individual people. But we can't ignore the larger trends. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.